Hello and welcome. As a specialist in modern hospitality operations, I'm really excited to be here to guide you, the students of Europe Hotel School, through this explainer. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most misunderstood yet absolutely critical skills in our industry, the art of the hospitality close.
So over the next few minutes, we'll walk through 5 key areas. We're going to start by busting the closing myth. Then we'll make a big shift in our perspective. After that, we'll get practical with the art of confirmation, look to the future by going beyond the single deal, and finally, we'll see how the very best professional relationships truly get started. Ready? Let's dive in.
All right, first up, the closing myth. We're going to challenge those common assumptions, the ones that often do more harm than good, about what it really means to finalize an agreement in the hospitality world.
So let's just start with a really fundamental question, one that gets right to the heart of this myth. When you hear the word closing, does the idea of pressure immediately come to mind? For a lot of people, it does, but we're about to see exactly why that's a flawed and frankly outdated approach.
This slide really lays it all out. The myth, on one side, is all about these aggressive tactics, like forcing a decision or creating some kind of fake urgency. But the reality, well, for today's B2B hotel clients who make very careful, considered choices, it's all about mutual understanding. It's about building confidence and making sure everything is crystal clear so you can reach a natural agreement together. And that brings us perfectly to our second section, which is all about making a fundamental shift in perspective. We need to stop seeing the close as this high-stakes, stressful moment and start viewing it as something else entirely, the natural conclusion to a really well-managed process. So, let's redefine what the close even is. It is not a moment of pressure. Instead, I want you to think of it as the natural destination of a journey, a point where both you and your client have arrived at the same place, with a totally shared understanding. When you've put in the right work up front, this becomes the logical, expected endpoint.
Now, this journey isn't just a random walk. It's structured. It all starts with meaningful conversations about value. Then it moves into careful negotiation, and the whole thing is held together by the gradual development of trust. You see, when all of these pieces lead to that shared understanding, the close feels less like a hurdle and more like an inevitability.
This right here is a really critical shift in your role. At this final stage, you need to stop thinking of yourself as a persuader and start acting like a confirmer. Your job isn't to convince anyone anymore. It's simply to confirm that everything is aligned and that both sides are ready to move forward with complete confidence.
Okay, so let's move into how this actually works in practice. We're now going to look at the art of confirmation, the key techniques that you can use to build that essential client confidence and just guide the whole process smoothly to the finish line.
Mastering the art of confirmation really comes down to these 4 core techniques. First, you reinforce clarity by calmly summarizing all the details. Second, you actively invite questions to clear up any little doubts. Third, and this one is so important, you practice patience. And finally, you learn to observe the signals that tell you the client is ready.
Let's just zoom in on patience for a moment, because it's like a superpower at this stage. A lot of professionals get really nervous when things go quiet, but you shouldn't. You have to remember this key insight: silence isn't rejection. More often than not, it's a sign of careful consideration. Giving a client that space to think shows respect, and, just as importantly, it shows you have absolute confidence in your own proposal.
And it's the same thing with questions. Inviting questions is a huge sign of strength, not weakness. It proves you respect the client's role and their responsibility to get every single detail right. Addressing those final practical questions about things like billing or logistics before a contract is signed is what prevents massive headaches later on.
Okay, so the deal is confirmed. Is that the end of the story? Absolutely not. And that brings us to our 4th section, moving beyond the single deal to build something much, much more valuable: long-term strategic partnerships.
This table shows you exactly why a long-term mindset is so incredibly powerful. Look at this. The client gets things like predictable pricing and guaranteed availability. For the hotel, we get reliable occupancy and lower acquisition costs. It completely transforms the relationship into a strategic alliance. It's a true win-win.
And, there are structured ways to build these alliances. You can use multi-year agreements, you can create preferred partnership structures where you become their go-to provider, or you can set up volume-based arrangements that reward their loyalty. Each one of these takes the relationship from being purely transactional to truly strategic.
And that brings us to our final and maybe our most important section. The close is not the end of your responsibility. It's the beginning of the operational partnership. It's where the promises you made have to be kept.
This timeline shows what happens after the signature. The agreement is confirmed, sure, but then comes the critical internal handoff to your operations team. Then there's the client onboarding process, and then the ongoing support and feedback loop. Your job is to guide the client through this entire journey and make sure their experience is absolutely seamless.
So, what are we really building here at the end of the day? It's not just a book of business, it's a foundation of trust. Trust is the single most valuable outcome of a professional, transparent, and well-executed process. It is the very thing that creates loyal, long-term partners.
So I'll leave you with this one final thought to reflect on as you continue to build your careers. When you approach that final stage of any negotiation, ask yourself this question. Are you simply trying to close a transaction, or are you working to open a long-lasting partnership? Your answer will define your success.